Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for attending today's IBM Middleware User Community Ask the Expert session. My name is Kelsey Tipshraney and I'll be hosting today's webinar. Our topic for today is ITNM polling scripts to quickly access ICMP polling targets. All phone lines are currently in listen-only mode. There will be a question and answer session towards the end of the presentation. However, you may ask a question at any time using the questions window located in the control panel. And also look for a forum link in your chat box and feel free to continue any discussions after the webcast in this forum. Tomorrow we will have the recording and slides of today's presentation available on the IBM Middleware User Community website for you to access. You'll receive a follow-up email with a link to those archives. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. We have joining us Ken Stone. He's a Senior Engineer ITNM Support with IBM. Thank you, Ken, for joining us today. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Kelsey. Hi, everyone. I'm Ken. I am an engineer with the IBM Tivoli Network Manager product. I want to do a little administration first. I have done some e-social content before, YouTube and blog and Technical Exchange and DW Answer, and I am interested in comments about this presentation, but also about this particular format, length of a presentation, other things you'd like to cover. So that can be comments at the end that I'd be interested in also to take back to a team that I'm on. Another thing about this is I received a lot of questions in advance that are not directly related to what I was going to talk about today. So I'm actually going to steer this a little bit differently and talk a little bit about Tivoli Network Manager, a very brief introduction so that I can show kind of how polling fits into this. So right away I'm going to jump off of my PowerPoint. So actually I got lots of discovery questions. This is part of our Knowledge Center, is a picture of all the processes that run with Tivoli Network Manager. And today I'm going to be speaking about some scripts related to polling over here in the section 785 over on the right there. But I have lots of discovery questions that I got today in advance. But in brief, very brief, there's a process that does a discovery on your network through ICMP and ping, telnet. Those are sent to a database where later another process that we have that is going to poll and SMP monitor these devices. So we can, that's a very brief start, and we can come back to some discovery questions, but the focus of this today is going to be my talking about the Perl scripts for polling that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention. So I'm going to keep this slide very handy back here. The reason that this topic is of interest to me is that we receive a lot of PMRs related to polling and single device, single IP addresses that are not being monitored or thought that they're not being monitored. You may be polling hundreds, thousands of entities, and there may be one or two devices on a single day which you have interest in. And we're going to talk a little bit about the troubleshooting that you might have done before today, and then we're going to talk about the scripts that you might be able to make use of to do a faster job of looking at one IP address or a few IP addresses and quickly being able to tell what the problem is. So the fourth item down there, I put test this today. This is an Ask the Expert session where this isn't a download where you're going to have to do a lot of review and take this back with you and think about it and maybe read it later on. This is something where today this is something that maybe you can try out. There's just a few slides today, and we could have some discussion about this and maybe some other things, but you could come right in and test this out today. And then I have the link for the DeveloperWorks answers. You could do some follow-up on the DeveloperWorks answers where my team and some level 3 engineers and some developers do check out the Tivoli Network Manager board to answer some questions. Again, we get a lot of PMRs wanting to know the status of a single IP address for ICMP polling. And the scripts that we're talking about today are specific to ICMP polling, which means chassis ping or interface ping or end node ping, but something to do with ping, not SNMP. And the reason that the script would be a good idea for a lot of people to use is that maybe you don't have access to the GUI. Maybe you don't have the username and the password. If you went into the GUI, and I hope it's okay that I'm jumping from screen to screen, if you went into the GUI and you looked at the default chassis ping, would this tell you enough information about one single device, whether it's being polled or not today? And the answer is probably not. This could tell you some policies and definitions for my chassis ping, but it probably wouldn't tell you enough about why something wasn't being polled. TCP dump is kind of a last resort, so I don't think anybody wants to start by using the TCP dump. And the idea is to quickly assess what might be wrong with a single IP address. So currently today, when you're troubleshooting, there is a nice must-gather script. It's a TechNode Online where it could give you the monitors.current output. So I could go to that right now and just show you kind of what that looks like. I have a chassis ping right now. I'm pinging maybe 176 devices. Yeah, that's a mess, right? That's 178. There could be thousands here, and this would not be an effective way if you were looking for one IP address unless you had more information about it. You knew the entity ID, or you wanted to look through every entity as part of a single policy. So that might be one way that this is troubleshooting is done with this today. So one thing I want to show you is, this is kind of how I do it, is if I want to troubleshoot a single IP address that I'm interested in, I don't think I had it, no, wrong window. I'm going to use the Precision Home Perl. I'm in the scripts, Perl scripts directory. So the first bit of troubleshooting I'm doing looking at this today is I do have my default chassis ping is enabled. And it still doesn't tell me anything specific about individual IP addresses. So what I want to do is, there are IP addresses I'm interested in knowing what the status is of them. So I've created a seed file. You could put this in any directory, but mine is, I'm going to put it in the scripts, Perl scripts directory where the Perl scripts sit. And I've put some IP addresses in here. Most of the slides after this are just going to be duplicates of what you're going to see in the demo. Most of these IP addresses are kind of artificially set up in the lab just to show you some examples. But this would be the file that I would build that would have the IP addresses in it that I'd like to see. So a little bit more specific information as to why someone called me this morning and said, what's going on with this IP? So like I said, I put this in my scripts, Perl scripts directory. This is where the Perl scripts reside for Tivoli Network Manager. And I just created, there's my seeds file like I just showed. Okay. So these are the 3 Perl scripts that we're going to use today. In the scripts Perl scripts directory, I've created a seed file. And again, a seed file, it's not like a discovery seed file where I would have every device I'd want to discover. This is a seed file which is just devices right now that I just want to take a look at and see why I'm maybe not polling them or not understanding what's going on. And we're going to run 3 scripts from that directory. We're going to do a ping polar snapshot against my domain. We're going to upload the IPs that I'm interested in with the upload expected IPs.pl script, and I list the seed file, and then I want to see the output of that. Demo. So here's my first one. Nope, that's my first one. Snapshot. Sorry, wrong directory. That's it. So what that's done is, a moment ago I showed you something, monitors.current. So basically we are taking that output from that OQL, all of that 175, 178 IP addresses, some information in there, and this has been sent to the NSIM database into the NC monitor table in the NSIM database. So all the IPs addresses that are being pinged and some information about them has been sent over there. And the correct output was, you wouldn't see anything here. I can show you some incorrect output later, but we'll just say it's good for now. Now I want to give it the IP addresses I'm interested in. No output is good. Now I'm looking for the exceptions to that. Okay. So this will print out some information about my IP addresses. So let's scroll up. Actually, it might be good if I have, we'll put this here so we can see it. cd scripts, Perl scripts, can't see. So these are the IP addresses that I was to check on. So right off the bat, here's one of them from the list, falls under the heading of undiscovered. So if you were looking for why 9.9.9.9 was not discovered, the script tells us that's not being polled, and it's not being polled because it's not even a discovered IP. So this is something that we see a lot. Why isn't a device being polled? It may not even have been discovered. So this is actually just looking in the NSIM database at the main node details table. It sees that 9.9.9.9 doesn't even exist. That's why it's not being polled. This is, to me, this is much easier than looking through a bunch of polar logs or the monitors.current that we saw. Here's some other exceptions that were found in that list that I gave it. Out of scope. This is a common misconception of out of scope. Scope is part of discovery. We talk about IP addresses being within a certain scope. Scope with the polar is a little bit different. These IP addresses have been discovered. They are in the NSIM database, but they're not being polled. And the reason they're not being polled is they have failed part of the scope of the polar. So go to the GUI. If I open up the definitions for my chassis ping, I don't have every box checked. I'm polling chassis, but I'm not polling every possible AOC file, not every instantiated device. Not every Cisco is going to be polled. Sorry. So these particular IP addresses, they might be part of a class like the Cisco Cat35XX, which is not supposed to be polled. Also, no SMP access is a little tricky. No SMP access is typically not one of the default class names that's ticked in the GUI. I probably buzzed over that a little bit too quickly. That's the reason it comes through in this exception script. I don't have it checked. By default, it wouldn't be checked here. If you have it checked, you still might see it in this exception because it just wants you to know you are polling a no SMP access device. Most customers choose not to put it here. They may set up a separate policy for that. And some of these IP addresses might actually be interfaces, and we are monitoring interfaces also. So some of these exceptions are devices that are being discovered, but the class names typically don't match. So I'm probably not monitoring the CAT 35 or the CAT 40XX. Next, we're going to look at the ones that come through as unmanaged. So maybe you're not polling a device today because it's unmanaged. A status of 1 means this is a device that somebody has gone into the GUI and right-clicked it and set it for unmanaged, that we shouldn't be polling it. So if somebody says, why is this device not being polled today? If you put this IP into the seed file and checked it, you would see it's a 1. I didn't give an example, but they could also be set for a status of 2, which is they came through as a stitcher. The tag stitcher, which has been renamed in 4.1.1 and 4.2, but there is a way to check for particular interfaces that you would not poll because they have a property like description or if alias of VLAN or something like that. So another reason an IP address may not be polled is because it has a managed status equal to 2. Okay, I'm going to come back to secondary or unpingable because it makes a little bit of a mess in the output. Not polled in the last 15 minutes. Most of the time, if an IP address falls here, it's because maybe the script was a little bit misused. Since it is pulling the data from monitors.current, if you change a ping policy, if you enable a ping, and then you run the script too quickly before we've even had a chance to ping it, you may get some false results in here. So if you see something not polled in the last 15 minutes, it might be that you forgot to just load it initially. But most of the time what I see here are just exceptions. Falling behind, for me the best place to look if you have a case of falling behind is in the version I'm looking at today is version 4.1.1. Sit behind. So I can quickly kind of look at the metrics file and take a look and see, are some of my policies falling behind? Is something did it get pinged and then we weren't able to ping it a second time in 5 minutes or whatever our interval is? So for the metrics for the falling behind output here, I would take a look at the metrics file. Okay, so I want to do this again because I skipped over one. This time I'm going to run it again, but this time I've added 127.0.0.1 into my seed list to check, just to show you that secondary message. So I have a different seed file to look at this time. Each time I run this first script, the one that takes the data from the OQL, the service SMP poller, and pushes it in an NC monitor, it wipes it out every time. So each time you make a change to the poller, each morning, don't ever run the expected script. Don't check unless you've run that snapshot one first. The one that takes the current snapshot of the chassis ping, the interface ping, and pushes that into the database. So you always want to run that one first, even on a change like this. It probably hasn't changed in the 5 minutes, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then finally, I want to do Yeah, see, you can see the difference this time. When I put 127 in it, which is something you would not see us ping. If somebody said, "Why aren't we polling 127?" and you could just say, "Well, we're not going to ping that. That's a loopback address. There's probably a primary IP on a device, which is the one that we're polling. Don't look for us to be polling the 127." Okay. You know, at the very top, I skipped over this. This just kind of gives you, at the very top of the script output, it gives me a quick log of a little bit about what I'm about to see, and the last time I ran it. This is good. It does, the one thing it tells me is, in some of my testing, I found that it would react very oddly if I ran it too quickly. If I started the poller and instantly tried to run it, if I tried to run it during a discovery where the script could not reach NSIM to even ask it about this domain and the policies. So I didn't find a lot of value there, but it did remind me sometimes that these scripts need to be run when you expect the poller to be running, the chassis ping, interface ping to be running, and that the database isn't being updated at the moment from discovery or from model. Okay. So most of the slides that I have after this point are just to kind of complete the PowerPoint. You can see it's mostly what we just covered in the demo there a little bit. So this is, at the end here, I just kind of put a best practice for me, what I would do. First thing I would do when someone says, "Why aren't we polling an IP address?" Let's confirm that the policy is enabled. And again, for me, I mean, I think most people would go into the GUI and they would check the default chassis ping here. That's fine. You can even see at the bottom there the key 2316. For me, I am a little bit more, oops, sorry. Where's my, for me, a best practice, first I look this, I just make sure my chassis ping is enabled. Make sure the ping is enabled.
Hey, Ken, we did receive a couple questions that are coming in right now. I don't know if you want to take a look.
Yeah, this is good because I don't have, this is, I mean, I've got a few links at the end, and then that's about it. So this would be a good time to. You know, this worked better. Oh, this is the button I want. Pop out. Okay, thanks. This is probably on everybody's screen, and it's probably annoying, isn't it? So Actually, I'm not seeing it. Is it kind of okay now? Is that thing not in the way? I can't always tell.
Yeah, for some reason it's not showing right now, so that's fine.
Wow, Jacob, I like Jacob a lot. Okay, for Amit, you know, this can work for any ICMP-based poll. It can't work for an SNMP or an SNMP link state or any SNMP-based poll. So if you have multiple ICMP-type policies, like an end node ping, a chassis ping, an interface ping, you build your own. As long as they're ping-based, this is going to work. And I hope that answers that question. And well, and it looks like I answered Dr. Jerry Swan's question too. If more
Ken,
than yes.
Do you mind reading off the questions because they can't see them?
Oh, I forgot about that. I'm sorry. So
that's okay.
I'll skip Jacob's because it's more of a comment. Thank you, Jacob. The first question is, can the script be used for other policies other than default chassis ping? It can be used for any ICMP-based policy. So, like I said, not an SNMP type policy. It can be any number of ping-based policies. So you could have 2 chassis pings or 5 different chassis pings, each each doing different ones, and this would work out okay. Do the script shows devices with managed status equal 3? I did not test managed status equal 3. That's a good question. I may check into that. Does it only work? Question: does this only work with chassis ping? Will it show you which policies or policies the exception found? It doesn't show me the policy. It only shows the exceptions. It shows me are IP addresses, and it tries to fit them into one of those categories, which is why I'm a little worried it may not catch the managed status equal 3, or it may put it into one of the other ones. But I would have to try that. I bet it catches it and puts it in the 2. Can you review the values for managed status and what they mean again? I may be skipping. Can you read the question? Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thanks. Can you review the values for managed status and what they mean again? Yes. So I could even go into the GUI because we have lots of time. And then I'm going to lose my screen, aren't I? So managed status is we can take an entity and we can tell the poller not to monitor it. Not any poll would run against a particular entity. And there are different settings that you're going to see for managed status. By default, everything is managed. Everything would be polled. And the most common settings are 1, 2, and 3. 1 is it has been unmanaged via the GUI. Someone went to a device. Where's my IP address? I bet it's still unmanaged. I could try this. Oh, Java. Oh, should I? No, you know what? I'm not going to take on Java. Yeah, you could right-click a device in the hop view, in a network view, and say unmanaged, and you can take that device out of any policy that would monitor. It would be no longer monitored, and that status is called 1. You can also get it in another way. I think the remove node script also does that. A managed status of 2 you're going to see for interfaces, and by default, every version out of the box, there are properties of an interface that we don't monitor. VLANs. There are a few other ones like Nomon, and there's some other ones. A lot of customers add their own. They have particular device properties that they can add to the stitcher and not monitor. So status of 2 is not monitored almost always for interfaces, almost always done through the code during discovery. Status of 1 is a right click in the GUI. Status of 3 is it's unmanaged because it was outside of the discovery scope. So if we find an IP address as a result of a feedback stitcher, say, so during discovery we pick up some IP addresses that were out of the range of things that you were going to discover, then this will pick up a managed status of 3. So that's kind of polling and discovery kind of rolled into one there. That may be a little more than I think I can explain easily. Oh, my question box, Kelsey. See, that's going to disable it. This is why do I disable that? I'm sorry. I'm looking for my question box. I have lost it. Today's going to stop recording.
Do you not see it anymore?
No, I don't. Polls, new options, view, questions, view, questions. Thank you. Sorry. So yeah, the values are managed status are 1, 2, and 3. I covered that very quickly. I hope I could answer that. Again, developer work answers. You could follow up there. We can move on. Is it possible to create poll policies which check if the condition is true multiple times before an alert is triggered, like high CPU utilization? So high CPU utilization is part of would be an SMP poll. So that's not even going to fall under the scripts today. So I have done some testing where you could check a condition multiple times before an alert is triggered. I don't know if it would be something we could do with the ICMP. So I'd have to say I don't know. We'd have to get back to you on that. That might be a good developer work answer type thing, because that's an ICMP poll that's going to have CPU utilization. In addition, there's going to be a number of iterations. So right off the bat, I'd say I'm not sure that would work, but follow up on the developer work answers. Are there any changes to these scripts in 4.2? Yes, they work. So I didn't cover that, but I was waiting for that question, is what happens if you have multiple polars? What happens if the name of your default chassis pings, or your chassis pings, or your interface pings, what if they don't fall under the default NCP default polar? And the answer is it doesn't work. It doesn't work in 3.9, and it doesn't work in 4.1.1. And I haven't tried porting the scripts back, but I might try that. But this works in 4.2, so that's one change. Is there is going to be another parameter that you would specify for 2 when you do the upload, the initial script. Oh, I'm going to lose my question box again, aren't I? Oh, maybe if I put it there, I won't lose it. I tell you. I'm sorry. Thank you. This one. This line is going to have another parameter like this, which will be something like my other ping polar. If that was the name that you assigned it when you registered the polar and created a second polar and gave it a name, then you would have a parameter like this, because this doesn't work in 3.9 and 4.1.1 if you're off the default polar. So that's the only change for the 4.2. Since we have managed status equal 3, are we still using is active equal to flag interfaces or out of discovery? The answer is yes. If managed status equals 3, that was because is active equal 2 during discovery, and it flagged interfaces that are out of discovery scope. That is still true. How does script work with regard to multiple polar processes? Great question, and I answered it just in the second before. How do the scripts work with regard to multiple polar processes? In 3.9, in 4.1.1, and previous to 3.9, I assume, if it's even there, it does not work unless the policies fall under the default polar. In 4.2, there is, like I just showed, an additional dash polar property to identify the name of the polar that the ICMP policies run on. There's another question, and I don't think I can see it. Oh no, the question was cut off, sorry. Can we manually make a change to the script to check non-default ICMP, a custom ping? It would do that for you already. So again, it's not just for default chassis ping, it's if the policy is an ICMP based ping policy. If it uses one of the definitions, here goes this again. Put that back there, put that there. I'm sorry, I think I'm killing everybody. If the definition is an interface ping, a chassis ping definition, it doesn't matter what's customized in the top. It doesn't matter what's customized in the policy. It's going to work. So you could have multiple default chassis ping. I keep saying default. That's wrong. You can have multiple chassis pings. You can have multiple ICMP pings. You can have an end node ping. You can whatever the ping is. If it's based on one of these, it's going to work. It's going to these scripts are going to work for those. I'm going to learn how to use this screen sharing probably as it's ending. Oh, I think I've answered all the questions. I did have, so any other questions? This would be a good time. We have lots of time or not. I know that there were some questions in advance that were not about this, and I talked about this very quickly in the beginning. And let me get some of my pre-questions notes. So when you run a network discovery, this can be run based on a seed file, not the same as the seed file we just talked about with the policies, but a seed file which would contain every IP address that you're interested in discovering, or a subset of the IP addresses. Or it could be based on pinging to discover it through this blue box 2 here. So our network discovery does a ping, or it takes a flat file to discover your network. So in most cases, most of those IP addresses are passed up and stored in the topology database for the poller to access later and to use those scripts. So I hope I kind of answered that, the discovery question. Is that this would be, the discovery can be done with a flat file or ping. In most cases, there's exceptions, there's collectors and things, but most cases it's flat file or ping. There's a scope of things that you want to discover, and maybe things outside of the scope you don't want to discover, but when it's complete, follows box 4, it's in the topology database. The poller, it's not a direct arrow there, but the poller does look in the NSIM database to know what its targets are for polling. And so basically the poller is going to poll all or a subset of what you discover, the IP addresses. And there were some questions about some of the exceptions there. The managed status interfaces could be tagged at this point. Is when you put them in here, make a note not to pollate. Okay, so that was a lot of the managed status talk. And there's plenty of time we could do more detail on that if we'd like. Yeah, no SMP access. Okay, thank you. What about no SMP access? And again, I think that the design of Tivoli Network Manager is that no SMP access is maybe something that by default isn't thought of to be polled. And this is my lab, and I apologize, it's probably not an exact definition, but by default, no SMP access is not polled. So I think sometimes customers think when they're polling chassis that they absolutely don't want I don't know what comes through, someone's laptop, a group of whatever could get accidentally discovered that has no SMP access. I think by default, a lot of people don't want this monitored. So that's why there's actually some output in that exceptions file which says we're going to list the no SMP access boxes here. I can bring that up again pretty easy, I think. No, actually, it's going to do something. I think that's the kind of the catch with no SMP access. It's just whether it's personal preference whether these are things that you wanted to poll or not. Obviously, no SMP type policies are going to run against it, but not everybody wants the SMP poll. So it's just kind of putting these IP addresses out there saying, by the way, these have no SMP access. They're being polled, but maybe this isn't something that you meant to be polling. So that's the best I can answer for no SMP access. It's probably a lot of history behind that I may not understand. I don't know if I had anything else in my presentation. Oh, I think I had some links here at the end. I need to move that. I'm sorry. Yeah. So there's some links in the PowerPoint. The developer works. It's a good place to put a question. My group of engineers monitors it, and the customers monitor. A lot of people take a look at it. If you don't want to open a PMR and you say, you know, I tried this script and I'm doing something wrong, or what exactly does this mean, or what do you think of this output? This would be a good place to put it if it's not a, it may not be PMR material, and this might be easier. We might get some interesting comments there. The Knowledge Center, this information is in the Knowledge Center. It does not have explanations of things like the out of scope and the secondary unpingable, but it just shows you that the scripts are there. If you have a problem that's more detailed than what the scripts can cover, there is a, this is the link to the MustGather. The MustGather with the -P for polar option, this would collect your configuration files. It collects the XML file, which tells us which policies you have enabled, the active model file, so that we could load this in the lab and take a look at, see how your policies are behaving. But it does collect the monitors.current. So if oops, sorry, if you know, you couldn't figure this out by putting a couple of IP addresses into the file, then you might have to do the MustGather and have to open a PMR for this. Was one other thing I have in my notes, which didn't make it. In 3.9, there was a slight bug in 3.9 that I found that it looks like it. I'm not going to do a 3.9 demo, but in 3.9, the seed file, it was best if you put another IP address at the top in 3.9. Put the IP address of the server that I'm on, whatever, just a dummy one at the top, because I think there's a little parsing error in the 3.9 version of this. It puts the first one in the out of scope no matter what. So that is that. That's all the slides I have. The slides, 14 slides. Sorry, one more time. Let me check the questions again. I had one other. Now that's enough. I think that's 45 minutes. Any other questions? Hello, anybody there?
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in.
I thought maybe I was dropped or something.
No. All right, thanks everyone for attending today's webcast. Thanks for giving that great presentation, Ken. Feel free to continue any discussions in our Optimizing IT and Service Management discussion forum. The link is located in your chat box right now. Again, we'll have the recording and slides available tomorrow in the webcast archives. You'll receive a follow-up email with a link to those. As you exit, please take a few moments to fill out the post-event survey. This helps us improve future events. We truly appreciate your feedback on that, and this concludes today's event. Thank you all and have a great day.